This is the best of First and Last, the podcast.
Happy Bomb Cyclone Day for everyone in the Northeast. Furiously head to Twitter and search that if you don't already know or have seen what it is. But apparently, we have found ourselves in a low-pressure system from hell. And so it's going to rain down said hellfire. The way weathermen describe what's about to happen today, you would have thought the ice dragon from Game of Thrones just showed up. Like they're about to take down the wall today with what's going on, supposedly. Everyone at the grocery store last night. You know how dire straits got last night? Everyone's in there buying bread and milk. I'm legitimately just hungry. Like I wasn't there stocking up. I'm not afraid to brave the cold in the name of food. Bear's hungry, it'll eat. But I'm out there last night in Whole Foods because I'm bougie. But everyone else is buying up all the bread and milk, and it is like apocalyptic levels of stuff gone off the shelves. And I'm just going over, it's me and this older woman, and we're just trying to buy some orange juice. And we look back there, and there's no orange juice. So we end up buying pineapple banana orange juice. Because that's all that's left. We said, well, we might as well take a chance. Spoiler alert, it's delicious. I may never go back to real orange juice. It's incredible. But that's the kind of situation we're dealing with in New England right now. We got that international symbol outside with all the windshield wipers up. Where everyone's like, well, got to get ready for it. Realized I forgot my brush, that car brush that helps you clean everything off. Such a rookie move. Been in Connecticut for the better part of 2 decades. What am I doing?
I got one if you need it.
Thanks. An embarrassment. That's why Allie married a real man, firefighter, have stuff like this prepared. I'm over here just a little boy status, gonna be brushing it off with my arm like an idiot, then driving home.
To be fair, when we had a snowstorm a couple weeks ago, I didn't have it, and so I was out there with a scarf wiping off my car.
It's amazing. The worst one, because people, you have to get creative every once in a while, because I feel like everyone's forgotten it at some point. Like, there's just too many snows for you to always be prepared. I wiped it off with a teddy bear I won at a carnival once. I'm just outside me with a bear with a heart stuck on its chest, wiping a foot of snow off my car. Desperate times, man. Desperate times. So everyone stay safe this morning. We're in casino mode now. We're inside this radio studio. There are no windows. There are no doors. Well, there's doors so I can get out, but not to the outside. So I can't see how much snow is coming down, so I feel like I'm going to walk outside after this and either be sad because I know I've got a long day of shoveling ahead or have a lot of disdain for the weathermen who have tried to get one over on us again. So we'll see. We'll see. Last night, though, First and Last, Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, we saw the Boston Celtics take down the Cleveland Cavaliers in a game where we had looked forward to it because of Isaiah Thomas going back to Boston for the first time. He didn't start. There was no video tribute, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, what we just ended up seeing was a pretty lopsided Celtics win. And for the majority of that game, especially in the second half, wasn't really all that close. I think the Cavs were down 17 for most of the game. And so trying to contextualize it, Kyrie Irving sort of taking stock of where the Celtics are following the win.
Maybe you got to play against the best and you got to beat the best. And, obviously they don't have all their guys. And, for us, we're just getting back into what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish as a team in terms of figuring out lineups and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure we'll probably have a better sense of both teams on February 11th.
And that's probably the right way to go about this. Kyrie Irving has been around long enough to understand, and certainly been around deep postseason runs long enough to understand how the game goes with this stuff. And so even he has tempered expectations because the one thing that, and we look at big regular season matchups like this that seem to have the storylines behind it that'll be enough of a motivator to get guys to play up to quote-unquote playoff level basketball. We see it pop up on the Christmas Day games a lot for teams who just want to rev the engine a little bit. They want to touch like 90% and see, all right, let's take stock of where we're at right now, because we know night in and night out, max effort's not really what we're about anymore. It's not sustainable, and it's really, for most of these teams, not necessary. And that kind of showed up last night. And I think that's part of what bums people out about the NBA regular season. And that's part of why we oscillate between a really weird place in the NBA right now, where we acknowledge the good and the bad in the same breath, and it seems like use either when they fit our argument best. Because overall, this was a game that we had hyped up coming into it for the obvious reasons, but as our ESPN NBA insider Brian Windhorst points out, didn't really live up to anything.
No Kyrie LeBron animus tonight, although again on that, it still exists below the surface. And we end up getting a dud game with the Cavs on a back-to-back and the Celtics having 2 days off. So we hoped for the best. We got the worst. All we can do now, February 11th, Kyrie, Isaiah, everybody's promising that that's going to be a better game Saturday night on ABC. So I guess we'll have to wait for that one and see if we get what we've all been waiting for.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Getting a quote is easier than ever. And the Celtics, listen, you take stock of where they are in the season. Number one is a team in defensive rating right now, per game, per 100 minutes, however you really want to dice it up. Ahead of San Antonio, ahead of Golden State. And we knew that was actually the big positive that came out of their win streak early in the season, where we said offensively they're pretty challenged, but defensively they were sticking it out. They were grinding it out. And so the Cavaliers' poor output offensively last night makes a little bit more sense. But in a game where Kyrie Irving only had 11 points, was like the fifth leading scorer for most of the game, you understand that that's not going to be what they need in order to win when things are meaningful. So this is good now as you continue to build resume points along the way to get to where you are. But man, it still leaves me with this sinking feeling as I watch all of this, and we want to believe in the moves made around the NBA, that none of it still really matters. Like, I keep thinking, like we do every season, about the inevitability of the top teams. Because the NBA as a product on the court with who you're getting as players, especially as LeBron James continues to refuse to age in his 15th season, it stays pretty static. Like, there aren't guys getting drastically better in a way that influences the balance of power in the league on a per-year basis without major moves being made. Now, Kyrie Irving constitutes a major move for Boston, but Gordon Hayward was supposed to be a part of that, and he's not. And knowing he's not going to be there, and Jason Tatum and those guys have been stellar this season. But there's part of me that still feels like none of this is going to really matter when it counts. And is that okay? Is the NBA business model now so predicated just on you're going to be interested in our players, you're going to be interested in our characters, that the actual results become a moot point? Like, we'll get entertaining games, hopefully, down the stretch and get an entertaining finals between two of the best teams. I'm not against seeing the best teams, but in a time where so many people will cape for this idea of parity, when so many people get sick of seeing the same teams in any sport. We dealt with this in college football, Alabama fatigue. Is there fatigue on the top end enough to where there's any blowback? Because no one's disputing the NBA is enjoying a ton of success right now, and it's got better characters and better players than we've had in a while, and they're interesting, and their off-the-court life isn't muddy and ugly. It's just entertaining. And then on the court, there's enough good players throughout the league to where you can find good action night in and night out. My question is if the eventuality still feels like what it is now, how soon does that become a problem? Does it ever become a problem, or has the NBA made that prudent switch to, we're going to fully be an entertainment model where you can get content from our guys 24/7. You can know them, you can see them, you can reach out and touch them. And that's going to be the hallmark for where we hang our hat in this.
First and last, the podcast.
And we can finally put it to rest, all this backroom talk, sources saying, man, how bad are the Cleveland Browns? Guys would rather stay in college and go and have to play for the Cleveland Browns? Guess not, because you know what's not in college? Money. In case you haven't been reminded of that over and over again by former players seeking to implement change in the model like myself. But these college kids are playing for free. And man, when you start to, you know what it is? It's that moment where, and obviously, I'll beat you guys to the punch. I wasn't someone putting in for my draft grade early. That wasn't the life I chose. Or should I say the life that chose me? But I had enough friends who were. Humble brag, had friends that were first rounders. Cool story, Mike. God. Anyway, when you put in for that draft grade and all of a sudden you see that possibility and you start talking to agents and start hearing a lot of the noise surrounding where you might go, what that might be worth, and it can become real to you in a moment. Now, I've heard stories for some guys where it became real for them in the form of someone showing them a briefcase full of money in settings where they shouldn't. That stuff happens. But it can become real for you in any number of those ways, and when it does, it's hard to really go back and say, well, I could be a first-round draft pick. Hell, I could go number 1 overall, and I could have everything that comes with that, or I could go back to college and eat bologna and have training table. But there's that issued gear. Watch out for that issued gear. 2 guys that decided against the issued gear were Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold. Yesterday, both announced via Twitter, Josh Rosen in a statement, Sam Darnold in a series of videos, that they were coming out into this year's NFL draft. And there'll be a lot said about both of these guys coming off a bowl season. Josh Rosen didn't play in their game, was in the concussion protocol. Sam Darnold didn't play overly well in their game. And that had been emblematic of his season that was a bit up and down. But these guys are going to be the first 2 quarterbacks taken. They're big trait guys. And the debate is going to become, which one are you going to take? And one of our own NFL draft analysts, Todd McShay, was on Spain and Fitz last night and had some interesting comments when discussing which of the quarterbacks he would like more.
If I had to win a game tomorrow, I would take Josh Rosen. If I had to bet on the next 10 years, I would bet on Sam Darnold. When you look at Tom Brady, the Mannings, Aaron Rodgers, all the great ones, Drew Brees, he has a lot of those qualities that you look for in a quarterback. And while he's not as developed, and I do think he would have benefited from playing another year at the college level at USC, I just think that if you're looking 10 years down the road, I would bet on him.
First and last of Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. One of the interesting comments that I heard from Todd in the extended portion of that interview, though, had a lot more to do with Josh Rosen and the rumors that are starting to swirl around him. And it's anonymous source season. Welcome. We've been expecting you. A lot of scouts, a lot of agents going to be circulating news that's going to help put A, their player in the best position to succeed, but also B, their team in the best position to get you for cheap. Like, make no mistake about it, this season right now, in between the end of football and the beginning of the draft, is an exercise in team officials and teams and agents bending over backwards to make sure that either their client gets paid, or if you're a team, you can get the guy you want for cheaper by trying to bring down the value, trying to find the flaws so that there's any reason for someone to fall into your lap where you want them for the price that you want them. Again, I'll say my rookie year in Pittsburgh, I remember Shamarko Thomas, who was a safety coming out of Syracuse. Mike Tomlin looked at him and said, we got you in the 2nd or 3rd round, wherever they picked him, because you're about 6 inches or 4 inches too short from what the prototype says you need to be a first-round safety in the NFL. And that's the reality, is they're going to go to the combine and they're going to trot everyone out there, the cattle prodding that goes on, and they're going to look for every reason not to pay you the amount of money that you want to be paid. And so with Josh Rosen, that reason tends to become entirely off the field. Outside interests. Saw the headline yesterday. And this, I mean, read like something straight out of The Onion. But a real-life headline yesterday said, quote, and this is an article from thebiglead.com, anonymous sources, Josh Rosen using football to make money. Yes, Josh Rosen using football to make money, like the rest of us. The headline is god-awful and laughable because everyone is using football to make money. That's the nature of the job. But the difference is people are saying Josh Rosen has all these outside interests. He's got plans for life after football. This isn't the be-all, end-all for him. And Todd McShay brought that up, said the NFL is a place where they want single-minded focus. They don't like you having options. The NFL would like all of their players to be poor and desperate, is the way they would want it. They want their guys to need football as a way out. They want it to be the only thing for them. And so for a guy like Josh Rosen, who comes from money, who has means, who clearly has big dreams for himself outside of football, that becomes one thing, but we're subjective with how we apply that. If you're good enough and well-liked enough, you having outside interests is seen as a plus, especially when you get to the NFL level. They give you the Walter Payton Man of the Year when you're good enough and have outside interests. In football, they hold you up as an example. The difference with Josh Rosen and something that Todd McShay said earlier that was interesting when he was on Spain and Fitz was that there are rumblings, and Todd said these are from people credible enough that he trusts enough to where he'd come out and say it, where there's questions about how Josh Rosen treats teammates and people in the building. And that, to me, is the much bigger issue. That's why some of those off-the-field interests might not be looked at so kindly, because that's much more applicable to me in the NFL world and in the team sports world, is how do you treat those people around you? That was always my measure of a teammate. And when you're looking for the guy you want to lead the team, that's the last thing you want is abrasiveness and divisiveness up there. So that is something that that teams will get to know a little more through the meetings. Teams will get to understand a little more there, if there's even a kernel of truth to that. And Todd even felt uneasy bringing that up, but it's something that's, I think, worth noting and the most interesting of anything I've heard about Josh Rosen off the field by far.
First and last, the podcast. First and last, the podcast.
This is the Olympics on Twitter for weird snow stuff. I feel like we should give a redemption story because you're already seeing video of people, because this thing's hitting the whole East Coast, people down in South Carolina sitting in chairs on their iced over pools, ice over ponds. Florida was getting it. We're all going to get a piece of this right now. Boston must be getting it the worst because, as our producer Allie pointed out, that's where Jim Cantore is, the one who was on the cusp of the bomb cyclone and all of the hell that's coming our way. He's in the heart of it right now, so that ain't where you want to be unless you're Jim Cantore. Then you're like, yes, I need more of this. Hook it to my veins. And while he's looking for that, I feel like we need to give one of our own a redemption. Diana Rossini was a part of that moment, and she handled it, made light of it, did the only thing you can do. I forget where she was at, but it was one of those cold weather places where you try and show how cold it is by taking the cup of water and showing that it froze in the time that you were talking, only to find out that the water stayed water. Feel like someone might have fed her warm water. There may have been foul play involved, but today seems like the day where you could go and get an easy redemption for Diana right now. If the people of NFL Live have any compassion, they'll make this happen. But if they're really in it for the content, they'll make sure it stays water again. Diana turned that part off. Anyway, first and last of Mike Golic Jr. We've got that here, and we love pointing out some good internal fun and content here every now and then. And yesterday we had it with one of our own. John Gruden joined Golic and Wingo yesterday, and I don't know if you guys have heard, John's been in the news lately, and yesterday was pretty forthright with Dad and Trey when talking about the Oakland Raiders job that he's been moving around in. They asked him point blank if Mark Davis offers you the job, because John was very deferential, as the way that neurotic coaches tend to be, where if it's not set in stone, I'm not going to speak on it as though it is. But when he was asked if Mark Davis offers you the job, would you take it? Here was his answer.
I think there's a good chance. I'm excited about where I am in terms of studying the game and prepared to come back and coach. I just don't want to sit here and speculate, and it's almost like I don't know what's going to happen, Mike. I got to be honest with you. It's been a long couple weeks. I know they've gone through their process of interviewing candidates, and until they're done, I won't know. But I did have a good meeting with Mark. I've known him a long time, and got a lot of respect for the Raider football organization.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr. So that was one part of it, and that was, to me, the very practical portion of this. Now, one of the other rumors swirling around, and good on John for being forthright. This is a guy, I think it's one of those, it's like Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men. Remember Tom Cruise, the lawyer, and I said, I think he wants to tell us. I don't think he wants anyone telling him what he can't do and can't do with his men. Colonel Jessup had that passion for being a leader, a passion that went too far when you order a code red. John Gruden has that passion for coaching, and he doesn't want to have to keep this inside. John Gruden wants to tell you, yes, I'm coaching again. I live for this. I want to be in the thick of it. I miss the grind. I miss having the same haircut as my potential owner. Sort of creepy. But John also addressed the rumors about that owner and about the idea that ownership stake had been a part of the deal and the package offered to him to come back and coach for the Oakland Raiders.
There's no truth to that at all. I heard Stephen Smith screaming at me on TV yesterday on one of his shows.
Well, he does that to everybody, just so you know.
That's one of the most, there's no validity to that at all. None, zero. So that's a nice segment that I saw, but no ownership, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Everyone, go ahead and breathe it in. Go ahead and stretch it out a little bit right now. We've already got tweets coming in, too. Gene Kelly's going to want to maybe turn the dial. He said, I wish they would give Max Kellerman his own show, then team Stephen A. Smith and Will Kane, so nobody would watch them. Hashtag I like Max. Well, hashtag we like Stephen A. around here. And let's just say, Stephen A. was in rare form. Like I told you guys, I was genuinely excited about the national show. He is not disappointed in the first couple of days. I listened to him in back-to-back segments, just absolutely flamethrower, Chad Ochocinco, and then go to John Gruden, who word got back to Stephen A. that John was abbreviating his name. Go ahead, take your last breath right now, because we're about to take the plunge.
One of these days, y'all gonna wake up and learn. I mean what the hell I say. This ain't some damn choreographed scheme in order to get attention. Oh, my Lord. He'll get hits to the blogosphere. He'll do this. Oh, please. Apparently, I made headlines again because I said that John Gruden didn't deserve to have an ownership stake in the Oakland Raiders. At no time did I question his football acumen. At no time did I question whether or not he was deserving to be the head coach for the Oakland Raiders. At no time did I say he was not worthy of it and that the Oakland Raiders should not take him on. At no time did I say anything about that. What I pointed to was ownership. Because ownership for a coach sets a different precedent. Number one, that ain't happening for a black head coach. I can assure you of that. Number two, it ain't happening for a white coach either. What's our proof? Does Bill Belichick have an ownership stake in the Patriots? I mean, a 5-time champion? As a head coach? I ain't even bring up defensive coordinator titles. He doesn't have an ownership stake. Bill Parcells, did he have an ownership stake? Jimmy Johnson, did he have an ownership stake? Mike McCarthy, Mike Tomlin, they've won Super Bowls. Do they have ownership stakes? Sean Payton in New Orleans, does he have an ownership stake? Bill Walsh in San Francisco, did he have an ownership stake? Tom Landry, Cowboys, did he have an ownership stake? Chuck Noll, Pittsburgh Steelers, did he have an ownership stake? Bill Cowher, did he have an ownership stake? The answer is no. But a guy who's won 54% of his games, who went 45 and 51 in his last 6 years as a head coach and was 0-2 during that time period in the playoffs, who hasn't coached in 10 years because he does a phenomenal job in the booth for Monday Night Football? John Gruden didn't deserve it. And because of that, he felt the need to come at me in a way that I thought was relatively unfair. And now I'm about to come right back at him. I mean, a legitimate argument could be made if I really wanted to make some noise that maybe the NFL should do an investigation and entertain fining the Raiders millions for violating the Rooney Rule policy. By already mandating that John Gruden's going to be the coach because we all know it's his job. Who y'all fooling? We boo-boo the fool? All of us ignorant now? I said ignorant, not ignorant. I have nothing but the greatest respect for the football mind and the colleague that John Gruden is. He has always been good to me. My aversion to him having an ownership stake has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with the fact that you can't have owners offering ownership stakes to prospective coaches. Because we all know that ain't going to ever happen for everybody. And there will never be equity. And I will never stand still and say nothing about flagrant inequity. That is just the way it is. You don't like it? Tough.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Add flagrant inequity to the list of Stephen A. isms that I can bankroll for later on in life. First and last, Michael Oak Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. That courtesy of the Stephen A. Smith Show, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio. There's nothing better than, by the way, it's the Silicon Valley. He's a great guy, but the Rigby, if anyone watches that show, he's always been good to me, is the Stephen A. version of that. He's always been good to me. Can't say a bad word about him, but I'm gonna. By the way, it lost in all of that. Like, I'm in it for the sheer entertainment value. I know a lot of people get mad about the stuff Stephen A. says. I am there for the theater of the mind radio presentation that we get from all this. But the point he made at the end, while I understand there are a lot of hurdles, and the points about the Rooney Rule are well served, this is making an absolute farce of a rule that's designed to help by being as public with this knowledge as this process has been. There are real problems with the application of the Rooney Rule, and I've heard it discussed in recent days, and I'm not sure what the easy solution is. Because at the core of it, it still seems like if people don't want to hire black coaches, they're not going to. Now, getting people in the building and in the door is there's still a worthwhile process and a worthwhile value to that. It just doesn't seem to be manifesting itself yet in enough of a way to where we can feel good about it. But the portion about Stephen A. being worried that this same standard of using ownership stake as a selling point won't be applied to black head coaches and won't be applied to everyone, I think misses the point that before something can be applied to everyone, it's got to be applied to someone. And so if you're saying your aversion of this is because it won't be applied to everyone, that won't be possible until one person does it. There's got to be someone that goes through the wall, and then it becomes easier for everyone else. Because the minute John Gruden does it, it's just like when the price point gets set for one of these new quarterbacks every time a contract comes up. Someone can't get a fully guaranteed contract. Everyone can't get fully guaranteed contracts until one person does it. So if you're looking at that as far as a precedent standpoint, you would in theory need John Gruden to get this before everyone else could get it. He would be the perfect patient zero. He would be Andrew Luck before the injury a couple of seasons ago that everyone saw as the guaranteed contract patient zero. That would be John Gruden's lot in life in this. But again, we don't need facts and real information to get us bogged down from what the real entertainment value of that was. Take a nice thing for what it is. Wrap your arms around it. Hold it tight. Maybe it'll keep you warm today.
First and last, the podcast.
Coming off of the Stephen A. Smith rant about John Gruden and how he's not deserving of ownership stake. Now there's no standard for equity here, et cetera, et cetera. So Stephen A. says, I'm not going to attack Gruden's resume. And then 2 minutes later in the rant, he attacks John Gruden's resume, saying it's not deserving of ownership stake in the Oakland Raiders. Telling you.
There is simply levels to this.
That's why he's the best. That's why he's the best. Because even inconsistency is consistent. And even going back on what he said 2 minutes ago is justified when you say it with the authority and conviction that Stephen A. Smith says. It's like anything else. Life, you can get a lot of places if you just act like you belong. You can get even more if you act like you are right and the authority on certain things. That's why he's the best in the biz. That's why he's the best in the business. The best in college football right now, according to themselves, University of Central Florida coming off that Auburn win. This is snowballed, and we said it on here. And I know the Dan Le Batard show and Stu Gotts and those guys have been caping this. Really, Dan has been caping for this for a long time. But UCF, they have dubbed them the official national champion. I think they're going to have a parade for them. But UCF has really gone all in on this to the point now where they are actually going to put up a championship banner. They're going to hold a parade to commemorate the undefeated 2017 season. Mike Oresco, the American Athletic Conference commissioner, went on Freddie and Fitzsimmons and said this was a big moment for the conference overall.
What it means, I think, is validation for the continuing progress and strength of our league, which I think is still overlooked. I said it beforehand, and people thought I went out on a limb by saying I thought we could play with anyone, but I think based on observations over the years, our best teams are really good and they can play with anyone, and I think this proved it.
And he's got to go out here and do his thing as a conference struggling to try and get legitimacy and respect. You got to go out here and cape for your mans. Because we all understand they're not actually the national champions. Like, I think we're all fully aware of that, right? And so why not let them enjoy this? Why not let them have fun? Because they're going all the way in on this. And they absolutely should. Someone who apparently is not in on the fun for all this is our own Paul Feinbaum, though, who is really cementing himself as the most hated man in the central part of the state of Florida.
It's normal for the national media to want to adopt a pet and have fun with it and pet it and enable it. And sometimes it's for all the right reasons. But this is getting to be a little bit ridiculous. UCF, as I've mentioned, and I'll continue to mention, deserves credit. They beat a couple of decent teams along the way. They beat Auburn, which, let's be honest, didn't really want to be there, but that's beside the point. They still beat Auburn, which has had an incredible resume until the end of the season. But to demean the college football championship, which is going on in Atlanta, with two teams that earned it, that deserve it, is quite frankly laughable. And I'm really in shock that Danny White would go on a national radio show and try to legitimize this school winning a national championship.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Come on, Paul. Let your hair down a little bit. This is supposed to be fun. No one is delegitimizing what's happening on Monday. If you think this is really going to have seismic enough ripple effects, then I don't really want to live in the world you are, where this can't be something that we all enjoy. But Paul seems content to live in that world. Again, SEC country at times, taking itself a little too seriously, and Paul right at the forefront of that. Love Paul. Love him to death. Great guy. He's always, to quote the great Stephen A. Smith, he's always been good to me. But this moment seems a little too serious. Because for the rest of this, it's great. So we've seen they're going to have the parade plan. They're putting the banner up inside their stadium like we said they should. Go all in on this. But how all in did they go? And this is where I think Danny White and the UFC or the UCF brass probably went, okay, maybe we need to dial it back a little bit. It's because they're actually paying the coaches. They all had national championship bonuses built into their contracts, and they're paying those too. Danny White confirmed this on Twitter. The staff was informed earlier this week, who are all going to Nebraska with Scott Frost, they're going to be paid like they won the title. They're going to be paid their national championship bonuses. And I feel like this was the moment that they were all dreading. Like it was all the UCF brass and coaches and everyone in a room getting hype about this. They said, you know what, guys? We're going to take what's ours, and we're going to put this banner up. Yeah. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a parade. We're going to get it all together, and we're going to let our fans celebrate. Yeah, everyone's in on this. And then some guy in the back, in the middle of everyone yelling and screaming, some guy in the back yells, yeah, we're going to get our bonuses too. And the whole room goes silent for a second, and everyone kind of looks up at Danny White. And you don't want to stop the good times. And Danny's like, yeah, we're going to give everyone their bonuses. We're going to pay everyone their bonuses too. Everyone's going to get their bonuses. And in that moment, I think even Danny White didn't want to be the national champion anymore. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. So congratulations, UCF. We stand with you.
First and Last, the podcast. First and Last, the podcast.
Since making the playoffs, I would argue Buffalo has been the best version of themselves. Like, I remember a couple of years ago when the Cavs won the NBA title for the first time and they had the victory parade in Cleveland, we all got to kind of laugh and chuckle a little bit because they were happy, but they had no idea how to handle it. Like, UCF's getting ready to have their victory parade coming up. I hope they plan this better because the Cavaliers' parade route got all messed up. It was backed up. There were delays. And I said, that's a city that has no idea and has long forgotten how to win and be successful. They have been so beaten down that even the championship parade was grossly mishandled. Buffalo's having no such issues with success right now. They are living their best life. Kyle Williams, their defensive tackle, scored a touchdown in the game that would ultimately help them clinch playoff position. Talked about his reaction to making the playoffs for the first time in his career.
You're just so grateful, for, been here 12 years and so many things have happened, ups and downs, and, you have surgeries and you're coming back from things, and, just grateful for, the opportunity to be there in that moment. You kind of envisioned it and you wanted it to happen, and, not having it happen so many times for it to finally happen, to be here when it happened I was just grateful. I was in there with my sons, and it was just a fun time for everybody there.
First and Last of Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. That was Kyle Williams on the phone with Golic and Wingo, 6 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. We take you up until then. And so there's a noticeable energy, and so we're going to do the thing that we always do when there's a huge gap. How sports have changed in the 9,456,727 minutes since the Bills' last playoff game. And so in that time period, you've had stuff like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram all start. The Cubs and the Red Sox both won the World Series. 7 major sports teams have relocated. 5 major sports teams have been created. The New England Patriots completed the first perfect regular season, and the Lions and the Browns both completed the first imperfect seasons. Tiger Woods won 12 of his 14 majors in that time period. LeBron James joined the Cavs, then left for Miami, and then won the Cavs' first title all in that time. The Lakers won 5 NBA titles in that time. The Patriots won 5 NFL titles. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the Chicago Blackhawks have each won 3 Stanley Cups, and the Red Sox and the San Francisco Giants have each won 3 World Series. Nick Saban's won 5 BCS or college football playoff titles, and will be competing for his 6th on Monday. And Michael Phelps won all of his record 28 medals. So a lot has happened in that time period. Times they are a-changin'. And it's great. I'm excited. Those are all fun, and those are all interesting. But those are also really secondary. Like, the Bills have taken us, and the Bills fan, like, the most famous thing and the most well-known thing about the Buffalo Bills has been their fans for this run of time. In a place as cold and as isolated as Buffalo, these people have warmed our hearts and run screaming and burning into the minds of Americans everywhere, each and every weekend. I have seen in videos on the internet the most unspeakable horrors in Buffalo Bills pregame parking lots. I have seen the creation of new life, and I have seen the destruction of tables and porta-johns. All of it in the service of supporting a team that until now has not repaid the service of their fans. Now, they got it repaid in a really big way this weekend. I mean, Kyle Williams scored a rushing touchdown. That was great. They're going to the playoffs. That's even better. They've responded, though, by living their best life since then. It started to trickle in immediately after the game because in order to get there, the Cincinnati Bengals had to go out and get a win against the Baltimore Ravens, and they did. On the back of an Andy Dalton throw to Tyler Boyd for a touchdown late in the game. And so how did the Bills fans respond? Not by having no idea what to do with success, not by burning down the city. They went out and started to donate. Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton announced Wednesday morning on Twitter that about $250,000 has been raised for his foundation by 10,000 donors, many and most of them Bills fans, since the Bengals game-winning touchdown on Sunday. Bills fans are now donating money to the Western Pennsylvania Youth Athletic Association on behalf of wide receiver Tyler Boyd, who was a Pitt alumni, spent a lot of time in that area of the country. So they're rewarding the guys that helped them out financially. And what a response in this day and age where, again, a group that has made its name on celebrating in the most extreme ways possible. Every weekend we see powerbomb videos. You see the videos of the people getting doused in ketchup and mustard. I've seen every way possible to consume alcohol at a Bills tailgate. It's the one place on earth I still want to go, and that's where we've come to now. So we had a meeting this morning, me, Allie, and Troy. We sat here. We had a decision. Troy, we made this decision for you, by the way. You weren't around, but you're in on it. So me and Allie were sitting here and talking, and we want in. We want to adopt the Bills. I haven't had an NFL team that I've been a fan of in a long time. Haven't really cared. I care now. You have made me care, Bills fans, and so we want to submit our application. We want in on the Bills Mafia. And we don't think we deserve blind acceptance either. We understand that there can be an initiation of these sort of things. So I'm going to tell you Bills Mafia, and I don't know who I need to reach out to directly, if this is the Bills Twitter account, if there's a Bills Mafia liaison that we can work through, but I'm willing to pay the cost. Standing offer right now. If you let us in, we want to be in for the game this weekend. We want to be rooting with you guys for history. We want to win. And so what we're willing to do, I'm willing to commandeer the platform over across the hall. I go and join Golic and Wingo for the first hour of that show every day. I am willing to powerbomb a folding table on air. I'll break that table. I won't light myself on fire because they won't let me. But I'll break a table on air on Golic and Wingo if you let us in. First and Last wants to join the Bills Mafia. So get back to us. Let us know. We'll work on the table if we can just agree on things and decide to go forward.
Thank you for listening to the First and Last podcast. You can listen and subscribe to all ESPN podcasts in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. First and Last.